Hi everyone, and welcome to the Disability Podcast with your host Eddie and
Damo.
This week it's just going to be me, Eddie, with our guest Dave Flood. Dave is a close friend of mine, known him for a number of years, and really honoured to sit with him today to hear his story. A few years ago, Dave had a stroke, and as a result, life took on a lot of change. Very difficult changes, but a lot of hope, a lot of resilience, and a lot of adapting through these changes that really resonates with me. Really thankful to sit with him and share space with him and just listen to his story and learn from him and his lived experience. So you're really up for a great pod, this one with Dave. Massive insights and really heartfelt ones. So thank you so much for listening, and give us a like, subscribe, all that. But yeah, really hope you enjoy the podcast, and thanks again for listening.
Dave. Big welcome, man. Thanks for coming along to the show.
No worries, Eddie. Good to be here.
Yeah, man. We've known each other for years, which is really cool, and I'm honoured and privileged to know you, man. And so great to have you come on the show today to talk about your life and your experience and where you've been, where you are now, what the future holds, and I guess living with a, would you call it a disability? Is that how you see it, or how, you had a stroke? How many years ago now?
So I had a stroke about 4.5 years ago.
Yep.
Look, I probably, in many ways, I probably wouldn't call myself disabled, but
yep.
if I look at it, like if I looked at myself from the outside and my situation, like there's definitely a disability there, as in there's lots of stuff that I used to be able to do that I'm not able to do anymore. But I don't know, for some reason I kind of don't really feel like I'm disabled.
Yeah. You still feel like able in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Well, there's I can still pretty well do everything that I used to be able to do. It's just in much smaller doses now. Yeah.
And like a lot of learning and adjustment and change in your life that you've had to sort of, I guess, make way for, that you unexpectedly had been forced to sort of do, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've been very much forced to learn how to make life work in a different way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to give us a bit of our backstory, man? A little bit about you, life, family, how we met, maybe? Keep it PG. No, I'm just joking. No, we've had a lot of fun knowing each other, and then sort of the events that lead up to where we are today, my man.
Sure. So, backstory. I'm married. Kate's my wife. Kate's an absolute champ, and I really appreciate our relationship and just the support that she's been since my stroke has been massive, and that support makes a massive difference to navigating life going forward. We've got 3 kids,
awesome.
all growing up now. Oldest is 23, 21, and 18.
Nice.
And just our youngest still lives at home with us. But kids are cool.
Very cool.
How we got connected. So Eddie and I worked together in a drug and alcohol rehab. Worked together for a couple of years.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I had so much fun, man.
Yeah.
Such a massive learning, seeing your management style. And I think we just both were such different people, but we gelled, I think, on our approach to how to best care for people and support people in recovery from addiction. And it was such a creative and innovative and fun time, I think. And I think our clients really, I think, saw that in our leadership, and they felt our care and professionalism. And it's great to be able to look back and be like, we were able to support some great outcomes for people. Because of good leadership. I love talking like good leadership, good management skills, and it's an exciting space. So it was great working together.
No, it was really good. Like it was I guess a bit of a transitional time for me. I'd just stepped out of an organisation that I'd been leading for lots and lots of years in the camping, outdoor rec sort of space. And that was great. And I was doing some study in counselling at the time. So to kind of use my management skills in more of a kind of directly supporting client focus was really good. And I just appreciated working with you.
Yeah, it was fun.
And it was great to just throw ideas around and develop something together. So that time together was really, really, really good.
Same. Yeah, it was a special time, and yeah, lots of laughs, little bits of heartbreaks with clients' life stories and stuff. But yeah, massively enjoyable time for me too. Yeah. Big learnings. Yeah.
Yep.
Then I guess things changed for you, didn't they? And that's probably where in some ways just organically we saw a little bit less of each other. Like I had some personal stresses going on, as well as taking on some management responsibilities in your absence. But do you want to share with us sort of what happened?
Yeah. Well, as you know, our work was very full on and very stressful.
Yeah.
And it wasn't connected to the stress of work or anything. But one day after work, I got home and I was just feeling a bit off. I was super, super tired. I'd had a really, really stressful day at work. And Kate and I were just having a spa at home, and all of a sudden my vision just went really weird. It's like, geez, what's going on here? And I didn't really think too much. I just thought, like, I'm tired. I just need to go to sleep. So I went to bed, and I woke up the next day, and it's like, everything's like real hazy, and I just wasn't feeling right. So I went to the doctor. And the doctor didn't pick up anything initially. They just thought there was maybe some vision problems going on. So the doctor sent me to the optometrist, and a bit of back and forth happened. It actually took a couple of weeks before I was diagnosed with my stroke, because I didn't have like a lot of the common stroke symptoms. It was mainly just like some very hazy vision and just like a bit headachy and just like not really feeling quite right, like just a bit out of it kind of feeling.
Yeah, so none of that sort of typical one-side neglect and like slurred speech and I guess those sorts of things.
After I had some like visual scans and stuff like that to see what was going on, and nothing had kind of changed after a couple of weeks. So they said, it doesn't look like it's an eye issue. It looks like it's potentially a brain issue. I got sent from like an ophthalmology vision joint to emergency to get some brain scans done, and they found that I'd had a stroke.
This is all over the period of a couple of weeks?
Yeah, a couple of weeks. So it was close to 2 weeks between the initial onset of this kind of weird vision stuff to realising that it was happening because I'd had a stroke.
What are you going through emotionally at this time? When the doctors said to me, I think you've had a stroke, it's like, shit, like, young, like I was 44 at the time. Yeah. It's like, I didn't think that people my age had strokes. Yes.
And like,
pretty healthy lifestyle.
It's scary. It's scary. Yeah. And I wasn't like, I'm fit and healthy and active.
Yeah.
I didn't have any of the kind of common risk factors. It was terrifying. It's like, I don't know what this means for me. I don't know whether this means I'm going to have more strokes or what this is going to mean for how I can live my life going forward. It was,
massive.
It was terrifying. And also the fact that it didn't get diagnosed straight away. I'd been at home for a couple of weeks kind of just like trying to work out what's going on.
Yeah.
And then I got told this in hospital, but because I'd already been living all right at home without hospital support, they said, you can just go home again. So it's like this massive news gets broken to you, and all of a sudden you're just thrown back out to like, this has happened, figure out how you make life work for yourself. And like they started connecting me to a few services and stuff, but it was just, I went home terrified. I went home thinking, how do I live with this? What does this mean for me? Like I didn't have any questions answered straight away. It took a bit of time to connect with the services to kind of start to understand what this meant for me, and that was really uncertain and quite quite daunting and scary time.
Daunting seems like a very relatable word on that front. It's like, I would just be tempted to obviously feel overwhelmed, but like, this is where I think Google could be at your worst enemy. Because you're left to your own means. Next thing you know, you start Googling and, you know, I don't know, like did you go down the Google road of just like looking up things? And because that could be like a massive, some people would just go straight to it and then it just compounds feelings of...
No, look, I don't think I really went down the Google road too much.
Cool.
I did, like I said, I had some vision issues, so I couldn't actually like, I could see like, and I've still got like a hazy spot of vision.
Yep.
But like it meant like things like reading was more challenging.
Okay.
Because like I just, there's an area of my vision that I can't see clearly. So yeah, like I found reading challenging, so I didn't necessarily do that. Okay. To try and figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I had to sit in a really scary place, and it took, you know, probably another few weeks to start to connect with some services, to start getting some support from there too.
Yeah. Wow.
Hey everyone, just a quick interruption from today's podcast to share with you about today's sponsor, FlexCare. FlexCare is an SA-owned and operated allied health service provider offering in-home services across Metro Adelaide and from our Norwood clinic. They offer occupational therapy, physiotherapy, podiatry, exercise physiology, and therapy assistance. If you're in need of therapy to achieve an NDIS goal, get in touch with them today. FlexCare is an NDIS registered service provider. Now back to the podcast.
Wow, where to from here? What happens at this next point? And for those listening as well, you know, looking at Dave, there's no physical signs that you have had a stroke, in my opinion. You know, just as a friend and someone who's known you a long time, it's one of those, I guess, disabilities or things that happen to people that for some people it's not obvious. It's something you learn to live with. It's something you might explain to friends and family and a few people from time to time, but it's not an obvious disability. And I think I forget the exact stats, but a lot of disabilities or things that happen to people with their health, acquired or born with, aren't super visible.
Yeah.
I think that's an interesting thing. I'd love to hear your experience on as well. And so where to from there? So you start connecting with services, and I think you start noticing a few gaps as well.
Pretty well I got connected with I'm trying to think of the actual unit at Flinders Medical Centre, complex neuro rehab. So I started having some appointments through there, and they linked me up with an OT as well. Just to start to kind of make a bit of sense of what had happened and potentially what impact this is going to have for me. And really, like I was sharing, it was really just like a bit of vision stuff. And I was noticing that I was just really, really tired all the time. And like you were sharing that, you know, to look at me, you wouldn't notice that there's anything different. I think partly because of that. And also the fact that like doctors and things weren't picking up on it too initially. It was like, I didn't think it was going to be too bad. It was kind of like, I went through a period, probably even a year or a couple of years of like, it wasn't a bad stroke. I think I'm going to be able to just get back to where I was pretty quickly.
Okay.
And I think like certainly early on I lived with that hope that, you know, it wasn't too bad. I'll be able to just kind of move back into normal life again pretty soon. And yeah, probably 1-2 years down the track, it was like the fatigue is still really bad. And the fatigue still continues to be really bad. And, you know, 4.5 years on, now I know that life isn't ever going to be the same as it was before stroke for me. That, like, I need to learn to live in a different way. And I'd always been, like, super active and super involved and, like, had lots of responsibility in in work roles, and you know, would always be the person that would jump up and volunteer to be involved in like organisations and school governing councils, and like, you know, pretty well anything that I could link in with, I would do. And like, I noticed very quickly with the fatigue, like there was a lot of stuff that I just couldn't do anymore. Like I would just get too tired too fast, and yeah, that became a real challenge for me. Like, how does someone who's really motivated and has a desire to kind of jump into everything and be involved in everything, when they can't do that anymore, how do you make that kind of life work for you? And like, even when I was exhausted, and I still experience this now, like even when I'm really, really tired, I've still got a part of me that wants to jump up and get involved and do stuff still, rather than like listening to my body and doing what I know what I need to do in terms of resting and giving myself the time to recover. And like, that rest was been kind of pretty huge for me.
This has been like a big shift in like, even like maybe your strategy towards new life, right?
Yeah. And initially, like, it was denial, 100%.
Yeah.
Like, I was going to be fine.
And optimism mixed in there? Or do you think it was...
Oh, yeah. Probably optimism too.
Yeah.
But it was, I very much believed that I was just going to be able to get back to life as it was.
Because there's some people that have strokes that do get back.
Yeah, absolutely.
To a baseline, right?
Yep.
That's pretty similar.
Yeah.
And for you, that's not the case, and that's a road of acceptance, right?
It's a road of acceptance, and it's a bloody hard road of acceptance. Yeah. There's been a lot of pain along the way, and a lot of grieving my old life, and grieving some of the things that I used to be able to do, to be able to get to a place of like, this is how it is. And although I wouldn't necessarily choose this for myself, I have a choice to either work with it or just like hate my life forever, and that doesn't sound like a good way to live to me.
Yeah, bro.
So yeah, I work with it or I give up, and giving up's not really an option to me.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
What are your biggest learnings for people out there, family members or people that have a stroke? Is sitting with the grief and working through that one of the biggest learnings? What would you say to someone who's in this place similar to you?
Yeah, I think like you were sharing earlier, like stroke's different for everyone, and I think Fair. This is disability in general. There's always different degrees and different experiences that go with what we experience. So I think there is a lot of like uniqueness and making it work for the individual, which I also think, like, you know, that also means that therapies can't, like, they need to be tailored to the individual. Like, therapists need to find out what a client's needs are and find out what the deficits might be, and find out or work with a client to help them get to where they want to get to. Like there's not a one size fits all. I think for most challenges that people experience in life.
Did you experience that with some therapists? Ones that were really like quite understanding of where you were wanting to get and what you needed?
Yeah. So I've had really good support, to be honest.
Yeah.
I've had really good support. Working in a mental health space and having some good connections in that space has been really helpful for me.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've appreciated the support there. But I've also heard some pretty horrific stories from other people about support not really being what they needed, and being sort of put in boxes and you know, told how to recover rather than be journeyed with through that recovery journey.
So you get to Flinders, you sit with this team. How long do you work with the Flinders team for since being diagnosed?
So I still work with like in the complex neuro rehab. I still see.
And can I ask, is that completely government funded?
Yeah, that's government funded. So I see my rehab doctor about 6 monthly still.
Yep.
We're pretty close to the point of signing off.
Yep.
Yeah, probably doesn't have a whole lot that she can really offer me now.
Yep.
But there was definitely a helpful connection early on. So yeah, they linked me up with an OT. So I did, I think, weekly sessions for about 8 weeks. Initially, that was going to be mainly vision focused because we thought that was the major deficit, and then we changed very quickly to a fatigue focus with that. Once she sort of understood a bit more that the vision was somewhat of a problem, but probably the bigger issue was the how to navigate and learn to live life with fatigue. And like I was sharing earlier, like being driven and motivated, like I would always like absolutely hammer myself in terms of like pushing too hard and then being absolutely wiped out.
Yep.
You know, and I might experience like multiple days where I could do almost nothing because I'd tried to squeeze too much into a day. And yeah, just kind of starting to navigate that balance between that drive and the impact that fatigue has in terms of slowing me down and learning to listen to my body more and yeah, start to slow down when I need to.
Since you've had a good experience with OTs, I feel like they're one of the most misunderstood therapists out there. Do you want to share with us just a little bit about your good experience and what you covered with the OT and what you did? Just some broad strokes. I think people just default to OTs or give OTs a bit of like, I don't know what my OT and what do I need an OT for?
Sure.
And it's probably something that you've had a good experience with, or you seem to understand.
Yeah. Look, I would say it was a positive experience. Like I said, I went into stroke not knowing much about stroke at all, and I didn't know what impact this was going to have on my life, and I didn't know what I needed to do, like navigating this journey going forward. So I felt, first of all, she was very caring and supportive, which was great to start with. So I felt less alone, having someone that I could talk to about like what I'd experienced and what the challenges were. She was realistic with me. Like, she didn't give me a kind of sugar-coated outlook as in everything's going to be fine. She was realistic in saying that for fatigue with some people it is something that, like, for some will improve in time, but for other people it is something that is an ongoing challenge. So I think even hearing that early on, even though that took quite a while to actually sink in, was probably an important step in terms of starting to accept that.
Yeah.
It's not like I had a false expectation that it's going to all be good. It's like it might be, and certainly for some people, you know, fatigue seems to shift and change over time. But my experience hasn't been that. But also having someone say that to me was important. Yeah.
Yeah, that would have been something to sit with at all different moments throughout this journey, like having heard that from her. Yeah. So you've worked a lot on just understanding fatigue, understanding what your triggers were, and sort of like maybe some reflective type, maybe even journaling of what your days and weeks look like.
Yeah. Lots of it came down to like just planning out my time well. Like starting to recognise the things that were really fatiguing for me. And like definitely for me, it's heaps more like mental activity will be heaps more fatiguing than physical activity. Yeah. So, and things like work. So I wanted to get back into work as quickly, work and study. I was doing some study at the time too. I wanted to get back into those things as much as I could. So it was like about, okay, how do we pace this out and how do we do it at a way that becomes manageable for you rather than pushing too hard, and then having days and days that it takes you to recover before you can do it again, and feeling shit and crappy in those days of recovery. So yeah, just like learning to be realistic with myself and plan my time well.
Conserve energy.
Yeah, conserve energy. Recognize what's fatiguing and what, when to rest. What sort of works for me and what doesn't work for me.
Here's a super random one. For somebody living with fatigue, can you still drink coffee? Does that affect fatigue?
I drink coffee all the time.
Yeah, you're still living your best life then.
yeah, absolutely.
Because coffee for me, it's like if I don't have 1 to 2 in the morning, I'm useless. So it actually gets me going. So I'm just random curiosity.
Sure.
Yeah.
Like I don't use coffee to try and give myself an energy boost.
Different to me then.
Like I wake up, like other than when I've absolutely flogged myself and pushed way too hard, generally I'll wake up and feel good.
Yeah.
I don't generally feel tired waking up, and it's like something that grows over the day.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But having things that give you a false sense of feeling like you've got energy isn't necessarily helpful, because that's the stuff that ultimately becomes dangerous in terms of like you push too hard, and then when you slow down you think, oh no, I've done way too much, and that's where you get that carryover stuff that might last a day or 2 days or
for sure
afterwards.
For sure.
Yeah.
So where to from there? You've worked at Flinders for a bit, eventually work changes. You and I stopped working together.
So
and then where to from there?
So I guess my job in the rehab got held for a little while. It was probably about 6 months that I still had the option of going back, but after about that 6 month period, it was like, I don't think that's going to be realistic. It was a very full on workplace, and it's like, I'm going to definitely need more time to heal and recover before I can do something. As I think I was still hopeful that I'd probably be able to get back to that at some point then. But I said to our boss at the time, like, I think you need to plan for me not being there. And then you got sort of handed the reins more officially at that point. I still wanted to engage in things as much as possible. So that's where my wife and I set up our own counselling practice.
Yeah, and for the listeners, you'd already been doing counselling.
Yeah.
Yeah, before that as well.
Yeah. Like I'd worked with people forever.
Yeah.
And I'd done sort of mentoring, coaching stuff through all of my management roles and things like that. Was very much a big part of my focus in leadership, is building people up.
Yeah, definitely.
And so then my kind of transition into counselling was like I loved that. That was always the stuff that was the most rewarding in terms of my leadership and management work was how can I build and equip other people more. So I wanted to get out of the business side of things a bit more, because I didn't really enjoy that, and focus more on the people stuff. So that was sort of my transition into counselling. So when I was in this position where it's like, I don't think I'm going to be able to go back to employment in a sense, like go back to my previous workplace. It's like, if we set up our own business, it gives us the opportunity to work. I can work at the pace that I want to work at, and it gives just choice and flexibility rather than having to fit into someone else's employment and being told I need to go to work from, whatever time, 9 to 5 or however the working day works, which certainly at that stage wasn't going to be realistic for me. But I didn't have to give up on that idea of being able to work, because work was still something really important to me at the time.
Yeah, Damien and I talked a little bit about that, even in the most recent weeks, about, job opportunities for people with a disability and people who have had, strokes and other acquired injuries, where you go, people can still work, but every day is a little different. So what opportunities are out there for people to contribute? So like you're saying, it's like, yeah, somewhere flexible where you could work your own hours. It's like,
yeah,
cool.
And like I think realistically, and this is even true now. I'm not employable to someone outside. Like I can't work 3 hours straight any day.
Yep.
That's too much. Like I'm exhausted if I do 3 hours of solid work doing anything.
Yeah.
Whereas if I do something for an hour and then give myself an hour off and then do something again for an hour, that's kind of manageable for me. Yeah. But what employer wants to make that work? You know,
it's
so having
tricky.
Like, I wanted to do it, so I needed to create it for myself because it wasn't realistic to expect that other people are going to make that work for me. Yeah. You know, it needs to be an incredibly flexible workplace to try and make that happen. And I was still learning what my capacity and capabilities were. So yeah, we set up this business, and we still run that now.
Nice.
Yeah, and that's given me the ability to work and continuing to engage in employment that's meaningful to me. You know, I don't probably work enough that it generates a great amount of income, but it's more about doing stuff that still makes me feel good and alive than working to get lots of money.
Yeah. You can pile up all this money, and then everyone's going to die anyway. So
sure.
it's you know, right? So it's like it's like, you know, life shifted, and then you just found meaningful employment, you know, purpose in the new shift.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, wow. So you finish up the work we're doing together. You've been through the Flinders, you know, system. You're starting to become a bit more realistic about the future. We're living with fatigue and some partial blindness in one eye. Did that improve at all?
No, very minor.
Very minor. Yep.
It's kind of something like I don't notice it now unless I look for it.
Oh, okay.
Our brains are pretty amazing in terms of the adaptability. So let's say I've got like just a hazy spot.
Yep.
And if I look for it now, I'll notice it. But unless I'm thinking about it and looking for it, I don't really see it. Like you learn to work around it. Yep.
And then from this point, you're then working, learning and managing fatigue. You and Kate set up your business, counselling. You're still doing a bit of studying to do further counselling at this point.
Yep.
And then how did you get involved with this project you're currently involved in? You're involved in a couple of projects now, which I'm interested in discussing how that opened your eyes to the gap for young people with strokes. Yes, Dave, you're still a young person.
Sure.
But there is potentially a gap in this space between the idea that people who have strokes are old.
Yep.
And there's a whole bunch of younger people that do have strokes, and that currently our treatments in a lot of ways are tailored to that older population.
Yep.
Do you want to share with us how that came about?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm currently working with two different research teams. One's around a young stroke service, which is being set up in Victoria and South Australia at the moment.
Not set up yet though?
We're like early stages of it. So there's like a working team, and we're doing things around like branding and creating a brand, working out how we want to have the service run, and what's been lacking in other people's experiences. It's like being built from the ground up at the moment. So that's super cool to be involved in, and I'll talk about that a little bit more. And I'm also working with some researchers in that fatigue space too. So like learning how to manage fatigue better, and fatigue's like really poorly understood. Like there's not a great understanding of what the cause. Like fatigue after stroke is common. Like it's around about 50% of people that experience stroke have challenges with fatigue, and it's like something about like 40% of people that experience stroke will have fatigue as one of the most significant challenges after stroke. So like it's massive, but it's also really poorly understood, as in like why that is the case and what to actually do with that to learn to navigate life well. So I'm working with some researchers in that space.
How'd you find out about them? Was it through Flinders?
No. So the fatigue stuff I linked in with first. So as part of my study, when I had my stroke, I was doing some study, and I was very close to finishing. So I'm working on my Masters of Counselling. Okay. And so when I had my stroke, I was doing some practical, like field experience subjects, as in like working as a counsellor and reflecting with other counsellors on how you're doing as a counsellor. Yeah. So I was able, through the business that we set up, to continue to essentially meet the client hours that I needed to be able to complete those subjects. And then I just had one research subject left, where essentially you focus on a particular area of supporting people. Yeah. And so I kind of put my study, when I finished the practical stuff, I put my study on hold for a couple of years, and I've gone back to it now. Yep. But I've gone back and I'm doing my own research on managing fatigue for me. So I was starting my own sort of research project. Cool. And as part of that, I saw that some researchers were doing some study on like what people who've experienced stroke had found effective in terms of managing that fatigue. So I linked in with this study, which was just a clinician interviewing people on what they'd found helpful. And I shared, what I'd done and what was helpful for me. And that researcher then spoke to me after our interview and just said, we're keen on exploring this stuff a lot more in the future. You've got some really interesting insight and ideas. I wonder if you'd be interested in linking with a research team and being part of that process in terms of bringing like the lived experience angle rather than just the researchers or the clinician angle into it. And it's like, I'd be super interested in doing that.
Awesome. So you've been doing these 2 projects now. I found it really cool. We were sharing before we started that with these projects, it's now, even just to get funding, it's like mandatory for these research groups to have people on them with lived experience.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
My understanding is with Stroke Foundation now, they do really value lived experience in research. So one of their criteria with projects that get funded through them is that they do have like a lived experience component to it, as in the researchers will consult and work with people with lived experience to kind of find out their experiences and link that in with the projects they're doing, rather than like a clinician thinking they know it all and have all the wisdom. They recognise the value in actually asking people that live with the challenges what works and what doesn't work, and if the ideas and the thoughts that they're having around things that might be helpful, like actually throwing that to people that live with the challenges to see whether that sounds like it's a reasonable idea, or whether people with lived experience might be able to build on that or contribute ideas. Like it becomes a collaborative process between researchers and clinicians and people with lived experience, rather than it kind of being driven and led by the scientists or the clinicians or the researchers or whatever. Which like, it just makes so much sense when you think about it. Like someone living with something is going to bring wisdom to those that are trying to understand it.
It's going to help avoid, I think, a lot of people who have a stroke or managing fatigue to feel less jaded with a service when they rock up there and they just get told, this is what you're doing. Instead of being like, hey, we spent a heap of time researching this with people who are walking the walk you're walking.
Yes.
these are our thoughts. This is what we're doing.
Yeah.
Do you want to partner with us? And
Yes.
this is our projects. And they can already relate to the projects from a like lived experience angle rather than just being like, I rocked up at this session and they just sort of like told us what was best practice and we were told to do it. Which is, you know, like it's just going to help people engage better with services quicker, right?
Absolutely. And both of the research projects I'm involved in, like, it's not a token gesture, the lived experience. It's it's not
like we have to tick a box.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like they really value what we have to share.
That's so
like
cool.
they see us as the people that live this stuff day in, day out, and actually have something really, really valuable to throw in the ring. And like so much so that like they'll work meetings around the fatigue stuff. So people with fatigue generally will function better in the mornings than the afternoon. So they'll work meetings around what's going to work with the people with lived experience rather than like we get the first pick in terms of where we want meeting times and stuff like it's like it's really good. We're really valued and
that's how it should be.
Yeah.
So good.
Yep.
You'll have to send me some info around these services and what's going to be coming out so we can add them to, you know, the link in the podcast, because obviously, you know, young people do have strokes.
Sure.
And
I'm keen to talk about that the young stroke service a little more.
Let's do it,
that's
man.
Okay.
Please, love it.
So yeah, like the young stroke service, it was interesting the way I got linked in with that one. Like we received an email to our business, our counselling business, just saying, hey, we're setting up a service that's tailored in supporting young people who've experienced stroke.
Yeah.
And it's like, hey, wow. I'm a young person who's experienced stroke. I'd be really interested in being linked in with this service.
Because they were more emailing you to ask about your clients, right?
Yeah.
Like, hey, do you have any clients?
Oh, yeah. Like it was like, would you be interested, like from a counselling perspective, to counsel people, younger people who've experienced stroke? And
you're like,
hey, I'm a younger person who's experienced stroke. And like I haven't actually, like through our business, I haven't done a lot of work with supporting people with stroke yet, because it's kind of like I need to get to a place in my own healing that I feel okay with that before I feel like I can effectively support. And like I'm getting to that place now. Because
it could just be like quite emotional for you as well.
It's if you haven't processed it enough yourself, it's very triggering. You know, we can't effectively support someone in something that we haven't got to an okay place in ourselves. So
understandable.
So when I received that email, I was like, this is actually something I would be interested in doing clinically in my counselling work in the future. And I feel like I was getting to the point that I was certainly getting open to doing that a lot more with my work. So I responded and said, look, I haven't done much support with young people with stroke at this point, but I have experienced that myself, and I'd love to support your service going forward. And they said, we're actually creating a lived experience team that's going to help develop this project.
Wow.
And I was like, yeah, I'd love to be part of that.
Wow.
And so it's starting from scratch, this process. It's a service, as I say, it's currently being developed in South Australia and Victoria.
State funded?
I don't know the funding body. To be completely honest with you. Yeah. But like I know we've got funding for like a 5-year period to get this established, and then the hope would be that it'll roll out nationally once the trial in these 2 states has been done. But yeah, there's like a team of, I think it's about 17 people who have experienced stroke, who are in that like the about 18 to 50 age bracket, who, like you were sharing earlier, generally stroke happens to older people. So then services aren't tailored particularly well to cater for younger people who experience stroke. So
experienced that with my dad having a stroke at 18.
Yep. So this is very much about developing a service that's tailored for people in the 18 to 45, 50 sort of age bracket who experience stroke, so they actually get the support that they need that fits their age group, because when you're younger and you're experienced stroke, you still want to engage in the things that people in your own age group are doing in life. Like, you still want to have career, and you still want to, be involved in meaningful things. It's not that you don't want to be involved in meaningful things as you get older and in retirement, but it's different. Like, you need different supports, and you need different services around you to navigate that journey going forward. And if you're living with some of the ongoing challenges of stroke for like a long period of your life, like, you want to create a good life going forward. You don't want to feel like you're just existing from when you experience stroke to when you die. Like, it's like, how can I create a life that's still going to be good and important and meaningful to me? And this service is going to be very much about helping younger people navigate that journey. And it's like, it'll work with people for like a 5-year period after they experience their stroke, to help them kind of re-engage in and create and develop this kind of life that they can still have a good and meaningful life. It might be different to what they were expecting or what they may be hoping for, but with the right supports and the right people around, you can still create something that's really good and meaningful. And feel supported in the way that you need to be supported.
5 years sounds like a good time, which is really like heartwarming to hear. Is a lot of it around navigating, and then like a good portion of it around like the getting onto things quickly as well? Is it a bit of everything? Programs that'll be rolling out, or is it still a bit unclear how to look?
It's still like we're really in very early days, so we're doing stuff around branding, and like we've been creating logos, and we're putting brochures and websites and things like that together to kind of just get that feel and flavour at the moment. And there's lots of stuff around, like, where did we feel like the services were lacking that we experienced, so that we can look at where the downfalls and the shortages were, so that in terms of like intentionally setting it up so that those things are catered for much better. So at the moment it's getting our head around the problem, so that we can work to create a better solution. So it's not, I wouldn't say that it's necessarily like really clearly formed at this stage, but it's in that formation process. And like I say, the value of lived experience and understanding what has worked and what's been good and what's been challenging for people in their journeys is being taken very much into account to make sure that it's done better going forward.
Must be such an amazing position for you to be in, with a room full, or potentially a Zoom room full, of people that are both walking the journey similarly and differently that you're on, and then also having a room full of intellectuals that are also like passionately walking with you, all collaborating on ideas and thoughts. And I guess the main goal is towards a project, but informally there would be potentially a great amount of support amongst your team of just
amazing. Like I went to a launch day in Melbourne, where it's the official launch of the project. So those that were on the lived experience team were there, as well as the heading clinicians.
Nice.
And just to meet each other and go around the room and share a bit of our stories, it's like it was amazing. Like, I met some really amazing people, and those supports and connections are really important too. Meeting other people that go through some of those similar challenges, is really helpful, because that, I think, is also something that's really significant, is the isolation that goes with experiencing something that lots of people in your kind of age bracket don't experience. And your community not understanding or not seeing or knowing what you're going through, to then reach out and be open-minded and open-hearted to connecting with a community of people that are in recovery or just in the journey with you. Break down that isolation and alleviate some of those stresses that you churn in your own brain, human nature, to go, oh shit, I've got a room full of people that are actually in the exact feeling what I'm feeling. Yes.
And that's That's refreshing in its own way.
Yeah, it is. It is, absolutely, yeah. And like I'd say for me, that's been one of the probably the biggest challenges, I think, going like of my stroke is like how isolating it is. Because you kind of like when you work and you connect with people, and you go out and you spend time with people and you connect with people. For me, when I experience fatigue really significantly, so like I can only work for a very short amount of time, so like I don't get that connection with other colleagues. That's often an important kind of social interaction for people. And even to like go out and like catch up with a group of friends, like that is incredibly fatiguing for me. You know, like to spend an hour or an hour and a half with someone, or you know, a group of people, like that's okay. But like if I go out to like a party or an event, often I'll be absolutely wiped out by it and feel like shit for 2-3 days because it's been way too much for me.
And particularly because it's in the afternoon?
It doesn't... Or? Like, the afternoon is probably worse, but, yeah, like to catch up with someone and to travel, have a coffee, spend time chatting, which you know, it does involve lots of brain work, is very fatiguing. Like that's hard. That's hard for me. Like I love it. I'm you know, I enjoy being around people. But I realized after stroke to like how big an impact it is to catch up and spend time with people, like how fatiguing it is and how hard that is. So it is very isolating.
As in isolating in the moment of being with people, or isolating after the fact, going like, it's hard for me to get out, I want to spend more time with people, we all crave our interactions.
Yeah, it's like it's that desire's there to want to interact with people, but the reality is doing it is really, really tricky.
Yeah. Planning?
And sorry?
Lots of planning?
Yeah. You need to plan to be able to do it. The spontaneous, just like, I'm just going to ring someone up and catch up with them because I want to, like that very much isn't there.
Yeah.
And also like sometimes it's like, it's been so fatiguing when I've done like catching up with people or going to an event or something that's like, is it worth it?
Yeah.
And so you just pull away because it becomes hard. And then all of a sudden, like I felt this probably like maybe 2 years after my stroke. It's like I pulled back from stuff because part of it is like I felt a bit less than because I couldn't do some of the stuff that I used to be able to do. And part of it was like when I go and connect with people, I enjoy it when I'm there, but after it I feel like absolute crap because I've done too much.
And then you're associating what you enjoy with fatigue.
Yes.
Which then plays like a brain response, doesn't it?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
What I enjoy also brings me, maybe not pain's the right word, but brings me discomfort.
Yes. And is it worth it? And is it worth it? Yeah. So yeah, I did get to a point that it did become very, very isolating because just connecting with people felt too hard. And that was really tricky. That was a really tricky part of navigating the changes in life for me.
Yeah.
But finding people who've experienced similar things, and finding ways of connecting with people that work, like, you know, how long I can go out and spend time with people and how to organise that into life. And yeah, like I'm connected with like an online community
Awesome.
of people that it's mainly stroke based, some other brain injury as well.
Yep.
Yeah, we have like coffee clubs during the week, which is online over Zoom. It's just like an hour, so it's like a manageable amount of time.
Probably in the morning, right?
There's some in the morning, some in the afternoons, but yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, but it's like connecting with other people that get it. It's being able to share some of your challenges openly and honestly that, you know, perhaps other people wouldn't necessarily understand. It's just, it's connecting. It's just connecting with people, which has been really important.
Yeah. I feel like there's been a lot of learnings in this conversation for sure, and eye-opening around some of the, even more for me, some of the things people with strokes go through, you know. I think one of the things I'm hearing from you as well is like the value of prioritizing community and people. And it's funny how I just take it for granted. Sometimes you just say, oh yeah, family and friends, and like, you know, they're there, and then when like, you know, the rubber hits the road in a circumstance like yours, you really have to prioritize it and reshape it. And like, it shouldn't have to get to that point for someone like, you know, for me to be like, maybe I need to like stop and smell the roses, right? And realize how good it is that I can just like, you know, humbled and privileged to just pick up the phone and catch up with family and friends. And I think it's, it certainly puts perspective on it, right? The importance of people and community. You just get so caught up in like life and getting busy and doing stuff, and like, appreciate that, man. I think that's really cool for the listeners and for me, man. Like, it's cool.
No, that's it. Yeah, that's been a challenging one, but yeah, like I say, I've found some good connections, which has been really helpful. I think something that like I was potentially would have headed into a bit of a negative spiral if I didn't find the right supports there. Like I have for me found that like lived experience, other people that get it has been really significant.
It's awesome, man. Anything else you want to touch on today?
Nothing comes to mind. Anything else that you
Man, no, I feel like we've covered like some really epic ground. It's been like 55 minutes. That's absolutely fine.
That went fast.
That's probably it for me, man.
Sure.
Yeah. Shall we wrap it up?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, great to catch up with you again today, Eddie. And
thank you.
Like, you've been a really important person in my journey too.
Likewise, man. Likewise.
Even when I first had my stroke, like you would give me a call.
Yeah, man.
Once a week or every couple of weeks, just to check in, and we could, we'd chat through some work stuff and things like even that made me still feel valuable and useful when I was kind of stuck at home and not being able to do it a whole lot of the time, and that connection and support and getting together and having coffees and stuff has been really good for me.
Thank you, man.
Because like I say, there's been an isolation factor in this all that maybe hasn't been noticed, but you reaching out and supporting and connecting with me has
thanks, man.
Been super.
You've been a great friend. Looking forward to having many more great yarns and coffees, man.
Sounds good.
Appreciate it. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Thanks so much. Bye.
Ta.